Ambassador Clapp, let me ask you about this military spending increase, 54 billion US dollars. That's what President Trump asked the Congress to approve. Will the Congress do that?
Hello. Thank you for having me on. If past patterns apply in this case, the Congress will not go forward with a spending increase that large. The money simply isn't there. Now, U.S. defense spending has been under sequester for several years now, and so it's behind, and there will be some increase. I think there will probably be bipartisan support for that, but it's not going to be of that magnitude, and not at the expense of other foreign policy instruments, such as diplomacy and foreign aid.
But we have noticed that Ambassador Clapp, both in the Reagan administration and also in the Carter administration, of course, that's some time ago, meaning Republican and Democrat, have been having double-digit military spending, but that was during the Cold War time. So now, what exactly do you think is Washington's pulse in terms of the level of increase Washington would like to absorb?
Well, I think it has to do with calculations of modernization and replacement. A lot of the military equipment that we have is growing quite old and needs to be replaced. I don't think it's not an expansion of our military forces that's being proposed. It's rather upgrading. And you have to remember that we've been involved in a war in the Middle East for a long time now, since 9/11 in 2001. So that's already 16 years. Military equipment does not survive that kind of use, so there needs to be some additional spending.
Of course, there are reasons for every kind of increase of military spending worldwide. But what about for you, Professor Watanabe? Japan, of course, that's also even more controversial issue. It's not just about money. It's really where Japan wants to go, whether you still want to be a pacifist country. Professor Watanabe, I know you tend to be a little bit different in your opinions compared to the establishment in Tokyo these days. So what is your take of the proposal for military spending increase?
President Trump is a businessman, so his way of explaining his policies in the beginning is to give the shocks to the people, and then gradually he can amend, or he can change his speech.
Right, but what
to
about
meet?
Yeah, what about Prime Minister Abe? Probably in your case, it's more about Japan's military increase, Professor Watanabe.
Here in Japan, Japanese people are not for the Abe's military administration like that, because there are so poor people, lower class, and they are put into difficulties in living that life. So Mr. Abe wants to hide those things behind, telling that to have the military allies with the United States will help the economic growth of Japan. So this is the reaction of the people, frankly speaking.
Okay. Professor Watanabe tends to be a little bit on the left in his country. That's understandable. But what about you, Senior Captain Zhang? I mean, when China observed both Washington and Tokyo wants to, at least the administrations, increase the military spending, does it send any signal to Beijing?
Well, I think really the increase of the defense budget of the United States and also Japan now are both historic. First, the United States defense spending, we can see that at the earliest years of this century, say 2003 or so, the defense spending is only about $300 billion, but now it has doubled. So, and also the defense spending of the United States now is over or more than the total of 8 countries that follow the United States, and is almost 5 times that of China, of more than 4 times. And for Japan, this is the 5th consecutive year, of the increase of its defense budget, concerning that or considering that Japan is a defeated country, also an aggressor in World War II. So this is very awesome.
So that awesome, of course, has a different meaning. You are saying it is very interesting to China, I guess that's what you meant. But what does that mean for China? Does China, as a result, also would increase its military budget even more than what is original plan?
First, I want to say that China will never carry out an arms race with any country, including the United States and Japan. But surely China will increase our defense spending, considering the defense requirements we are meeting with. For Japan, now we see that they are purchasing offensive weapons like fighter jets, submarines, also the amphibious landing warships. And China has to increase its warships and fighters to make better defense of our motherland.
All right. Well, going to go into some of the details, let the other guests respond to what you have just said as well. But Ambassador Clapp, it's very interesting because during the congressional speech given by President Trump, the very first time some even argued that he became president-like in your country, actually has been talking about he is the president of the United States, not representing the world. He's also asking the allies to increase their military spending with NATO, for example. And also, he's been saying that United States don't want to go to those wars anymore. You've already spent $6 trillion US, according to him. Of course, facts check is needed here on the wars over the past decade or so. So without a war, with allies paying more, many people would ask the increase and the momentum for military spending increase. What is that for? And who or which country or which countries is that aiming at?
Well, as I said earlier, it doesn't have to do with what's happening in the outside world or aiming it at any particular country.
Ambassador, come on. I mean, when you have
with replacing.
Yeah, when you have the argument coming from the Pentagon, there's always the goal of having an enemy so that the military can increase its budget. It's same worldwide in U.S. politics. It's true every year. So once again, I know you're from the civilian
Well, that's your
side.
opinion, but not mine.
Okay, in your opinion,
I simply don't agree with your statement.
in your opinion, you're coming from the civilian side, namely earlier working with the State Department. How is that diplomacy and so-called military increase is being balanced from your perspective, Ambassador Clapp?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
My question is very easy.
I said earlier that I don't believe that whatever increase in military spending may occur during this administration is going to be done at the expense of diplomacy and foreign aid and other instruments of foreign policy. The Congress simply won't allow that to happen. Senator McConnell has already come out against the president's proposals to cut foreign the State Department budget and the USAID budget.
Very interesting, the internal politics in United States. Professor Watanabe, is there any way also interesting politically going on inside Tokyo when the Abe administration made the proposal in the Congress? Is there going to be any opposition voices, or actually it pretty much have a free ticket?
Half of the members of the Komeito coalition party is very dubious to the policy of Mr. Abe, and the biggest opposition party, Minshuto Democratic Party, they are keenly against Mr. Abe's policy because to have the world peace order, we need the negotiations. And all the countries which welcomed or which were, you see, with the United States military forces, there are so many refugees and the political turmoils. So opposition parties in Japan are against Mr. Abe's policies as a whole.
Senior Captain Zhang, after heard what your two colleagues in this debate had to say, many would also ask, why is China has to increase its military spending over the past years continuously? Do you want to give also some reasoning here?
Well, I think considering the population and also the coastlines of China, we have to defend, and also the history, the modern history of China, that China has been invaded by Western countries, including Japan, from the sea many times, almost 470 times. So I think we have to strengthen our defenses against any possible invasion in the future. And also we can see that apart from the portion of the defense budget for armament or for weapons and equipment, a large portion of the money goes to actually to improve the working and living conditions for the military men. And we know that the wages of the military men in China are less than that of Japan and the United States. So
well, people would say they're very different development stage, right? I mean, the average salaries of the common Chinese are lower than the average of that of the United States and Japan as well. Senior Captain Zhang, I have to come in here about that.
And also, we have to concentrate on the readiness training, including the military exercises.
Does it increase the possibility that there might be more military conflict in the region and even beyond, Senior Captain Zhang?
No, I don't think so. Maybe we have to see the policies, the defense policies. The Chinese defense policy is defensive in nature. In recent centuries, China has never invaded other countries, but or in the last several decades, we can see that the wars have been waged or initiated by the United States. And also in modern history of China, China was invaded several times by Japan. So that's why we have to strengthen our defenses.
Okay, well, we have to let the other two guests comment about that. Ambassador Clapp, briefly.
Well, I think that the leaders of our countries will be very careful to maintain conversations with each other about our respective interests, so that we don't wind up inadvertently in military situations, of military conflict. I think it's incumbent on all of our leaderships to be aware of the dangers of that, including military leadership. Now, I think we need to take into account that there are robust conversations between the U.S. and China, U.S. and Japan, and all three countries all the time at different levels of government. It's not just a matter of what the U.S. president or any single leader says publicly. There's a lot of dialogue going on between and among our three countries, and we have to bear that in mind. And that provides a kind of umbrella for the activity of our military forces in the Pacific.
All right. Senior Captain Zhang, is there any military direct exchanges happening since President Trump came into office between China and the United States, as you know?
I think there are normal contacts between the two militaries, and through the channel of the DoD and also the National Defense Department of China.
Okay, the routine is still going on.
Yeah.
Professor Watanabe, you want to comment also on what Senior Captain Zhang earlier said about Japan and China's strategy, certainly for the region?
China, Japan, and the United States, those three are three biggest powers of economy of the world. If those three is given the environment to cooperate, the world would not need military power, but it is impossible for the time being. So first is to speak with each other, negotiate what is the peace order in the world. This is very important, I think.